Good evening and welcome to String Theory, the weekly YouTube live show where you ask the questions and we try to give the answers concerning all things stringed. Welcome back. It's losing track of how many weeks this has been going on, but it's easy to lose track because it's so much fun. I want to throw a big shout out to our main sponsor, G&G Music, Dovetail, up in Antigonish, the world's #1 Boucher guitar dealer. Carries a plethora of things for you to go up there and look at and buy and play. Also, Levy Straps, Boucher guitars, of course, Robin and Guillaume and Julian and the gang, Recording King guitars, and K&K pickups. So that's a pretty exciting deal. I'll tell you about that here in a second. If you like this channel and you love what we do and you have fun and you make, sit back drinking your beer there every Wednesday night and every Monday morning and evening, making fun of me and stuff, and you like that, if you want to send us a tip, jpcormier38@gmail.com or directly to paypal.me/jpcormiermusic. And there we go. So there's our little introduction thing that we do every Wednesday. Some big news that I think our membership might know that nobody else knows is that last week, after 15 years of loyal use and promotion of this company, I've been telling people about them far and wide for over a decade and a half now. K&K Pickups made me an official endorsed artist with them, and I'm really freaked out about that and so happy. And so yeah, it doesn't change anything because I'm still gonna be screaming to you guys about how great those pickups are. But I'm working right now on a demonstration video that'll be up here shortly. There's a review coming of the Yamaha FGX5 that people have been asking me for. That's coming up, so keep your eyes and your ears open for that. Lots of big things going on with Boucher, Recording King. God, there's so many things happening that it's a little overwhelming. It seems to just get bigger each week. It just gets bigger and bigger. So we're having a lot of fun. This is a great, actually great challenge for me, and it's very interesting. It's not someplace I thought that I would be at this point in my life, but I'll take it. So I see we have a large contingent of people gathered. Oh, I want to talk about my beer tonight. I played this place last weekend, Sober Island Brewing in Sheet Harbor, Nova Scotia, and they make this beer. One of the beers they make is called Beth's Black, and it's an oyster stout. Figure that one out. Anyhow, local, great local pubs and breweries here. Uncle Leo's, these guys, there's a ton of them. Go drink local beer. You can't go anywhere else, you might as well drink some local beer. Okay.
In your pajamas.
In your pajamas. Naked if you want, nobody's going to see you. All right, so how are we doing over there?
Good. Good. We got Lyle Goldberg up first.
Lyle Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Any tricks or strategies to keep solid timing while playing really fast bluegrass rhythm guitar, such as Roll in My Sweet Baby's Arms?
No.
Okay.
Timing is a learned commodity. And what that means is you can't just snap your finger. You can't practice good timing. It has to be built. I suppose you could call it practice, but it's not really, because you can't really practice it. It's no good to play with a metronome, because a metronome is too steady. Good music at a proper tempo that holds its tempo usually does this. And that's what makes it drive. It ebbs and flows, but it stays on that one tempo and goes above and below it, above and below it, like very subtly all the time. And one way to do it would be to play rhythm guitar with the Flat and Scruggs recording of that song. That's what I would do if I was you. And if you can keep up with that record, it's the same premise you're going to use when you keep up with a group of musicians. Now, the problem is, if not all the musicians you're playing with are capable of keeping that kind of time, you're going to have a train wreck. But that's what constitutes a band. Is guys, a group of guys who can actually play all the same time with the same drive. And it's very, very difficult. It's incredibly difficult. And like I've seen world-class bands start out at 140 BPM and they end up at 120. So it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. The best way to do it is, if you want to practice playing at speed at levels that are impressive and impressive in their consistency, play with the old records. Play with Flatt and Scruggs. Play with Bill Monroe's band on record. Play along with those records, and man, you will start to understand timing. And because another thing you have to realize, that timing's not necessarily, in a bluegrass band, created by the guitar player. The guitar player is really just the backbeat. The real rhythm is contained in the bass and the mandolin, which is playing the one and the backbeat, right? A percussive backbeat, in the case of the mandolin. Boom, chuck, right? And the guitar is doing both of those parts, but at a much lower level and in a supportive level to this percussive thing that's happening with the upright bass and the mandolin, or the electric bass, doesn't matter. Bass and mando, right? And the banjo, of course, is playing syncopation against that, hopefully as straight as possible, with a bit of swing, which could cause, it depends on the tune, right, or the song. And then the fiddler, the dobro player, they're just playing they're laying on top of that like it was a giant mattress. So you have to understand those things, right? You have to understand where rhythm comes from in an ensemble. And the guitar player, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but guitar player is not the rhythm player in a bluegrass band. The rhythm comes from the bass player and the mandolin player. Those are the guys that are really holding it together. The guitar player is holding it, but without those guys doing exactly what he's doing and vice versa, there's no rhythm. It's just all over the place. It'll speed up or slow down out of control, and on that goes. So I could give a whole lecture on that, because it's one of the things that I get like just beat to death when I went to the States when I was a kid playing with bluegrass bands. I had a guy whose name was Emmett Sullivan, the banjo player for the group I was started out with down there. And the man had perfect timing. So perfect it was frightening. He drove. When he started somewhere, you better be there. And you better be there till the end of the song. He was going to kick your ass, and literally. And he used to sidle up beside me on stage and, "What are you doing, boy? Can't you play that thing in time? What's the matter with you, boy?" And just be tearing me up in the middle of a song. And a couple of times he actually made me cry on stage. He was riding me so hard. And he did that to me for about a year, all in good fun, really. But I took it seriously because I idolized him, and so he taught me to play good time, and it's invaluable. You can't do anything without proper time. So there you go. That's a whole other story. We'll get into some Life and Music episode, I would think. Okay, so who's next?
Brother Joe.
Brother Joe.
Mm-hmm. He's trying to stump you.
Yeah.
It's more of a trivia question than a theory question. He wants to know if you know what world-famous rock guitarist uses sixpence for his pick.
I used to. I just heard this somewhere. That was on Facebook yesterday. I don't remember who it was.
He says it's Brian May.
Was it really Brian May?
That's what he said.
Wow.
I don't know.
Okay, cool. Well, there you go. Makes sense to me. A lot of people, I've heard that a lot of times, people using coins for picks. It's not unusual. But yeah, okay, cool. Who's next?
Acoustic Guitar Canada.
I just got it today in the mail. Thanks, guys. Acoustic Guitar Canada.
Would you mind explaining why you chose to design your signature model as a 12-fret cutaway opposed to a 14-fret neck?
I think I answered this in a previous episode, so I'll keep this short. To make a long answer short, 12 fret guitars are a different scale, therefore a different tone, and I find that they have greater sustain and more volume in the sonic image that's desirable, right? There's guitars. You have a dreadnought, it has a lot of bass and a lot of bottom end and tons of it, but that's not necessarily what you want. It's uncontrolled. A 12 fret neck and a small body is very controlled and very powerful because it's that weird different scale. And of course I wanted a cutaway because I had access above the 12th fret. And to make a triple O body with a cutaway is very, very difficult. And I think only Robin could have pulled it off the way he did. And of course it turned out exactly the way I wanted it to. So that's it. It's all about scale and about, the same. Any 12 fret guitar, they just don't sound like a 14 fret guitar. There's something more to them somehow because I don't know. It's mathematics and part of guitar building that I don't claim to understand, but I claim to understand it as a player. Because every 12 fret guitar I've ever played has always appealed to me because of that. And even my other 12 fret Boucher, Yogi, she's not a cutaway, but I play her all the time because I love the way she sounds and plays. There's also a big difference, I think, in the action on a 12 fret neck. Scale shorter, therefore strings are a little easier to manage and that you get more. It's just better as in a tactile way than a 14 fret instrument. That's my opinion. So there you go. Who's next?
John.
John.
Mm-hmm.
John.
I think John from Ireland, if I remember correctly.
Oh, John from Ireland.
I think. If there's any opinions on the difference between Rosewood and Mahogany Studio Goose, which would you prefer?
It depends on the body. If you're, I don't, and I don't have a preference because I have both. I have all his woods. His woods are true to form, so that means what that means is, well, I shouldn't say that either because his OMs are freakish. So you have to play them. There's really no way for me to answer that question because Robin's guitars are so weird and unique. Like his OM bodies of Rosewood, let's say, and Mahogany or Bubinga can have just as much volume and projection as a dreadnought made out of mahogany, right? So it's very difficult for me to answer that question. You can't go wrong with any of Robin's guitars. So it's going to come down to the true to form nature of the species of woods he uses. So his Rosewoods sound like rosewood. They're dark, fat, and not quite as penetrative as mahogany, which is warm and has a nice midpoint and bright shimmering high end. And Bubinga is a combination sort of rosewood and mahogany. It's got that dark projecting volume, but it has a sparkle on it. And his other woods, like he uses cocobolo, he uses maple, and all of those species all act the way they're supposed to. But the way he builds guitars is ridiculous. I don't know to this day how he does what he does. So it's very difficult to tell somebody unless they have a very specific reason they want a Boucher. Like if you were telling me you wanted a Boucher for like playing if this is John from Ireland and you want the guitar to use for perhaps like a dadgad stuff like rhythm or even accompaniment to sing, or you're a fingerstyle player, you definitely want to go with an OM Studio Goose, and it doesn't matter what wood you get, you'll be happy. But if you wanted it for maybe a larger ensemble and you don't play in dadgad as much, you should probably go with a Studio Goose Dreadnought. And I would go with a rosewood or a mahogany. But then again, Bubinga is nice too. But it's just, you really have to, you could almost go through the videos that I have up on YouTube that demonstrate all 8 of my guitars. They're very true to form. You can hear what they sound like. And if you contact Guillaume at Boucher, or Robin himself, eventually you might be able to get in touch with Robin himself, but Guillaume knows as well. If you told him what you're looking for, they would tell you what to buy that's already in existence, or they could design one for you that doesn't cost any extra. They would just put it in the queue with the other things, and it would be built for you. But like I said, you can't go wrong. There's no way to buy a bad Boucher. So I hope that helps. Probably doesn't help much, but I can't look at any of my Bouchers and say I don't like that one, or I don't like this one's better than that one, or whatever. They're all amazing, and they all serve a purpose. They all have a different personality and a different everything. They're like living things. They're like the trees are still alive in them. So anyhow, I hope that helps. And who's next?
Herschel Rector.
Herschel.
Can you give your thoughts on hanging guitars versus storing in cases? I see some on your wall and on a stand. I hang mine on my wall.
Well, the old rule they used to always say is you'd never hang a guitar on an outside wall, because guitars are so alive and breathing all the time that they can literally draw weather in through a wall, through drywall, through siding, through plywood. And if it's wet or exceptionally dry outside, they have the ability to actually draw the outside into the inside, which could well be true, because I've seen a lot of guitars hung on outside walls that get destroyed, and that's probably why. So if you're going to hang a guitar in your house, make sure the wall is inside the house. It doesn't have an outside face. That keeps it so it's hanging inside the environment in the home and not exposed to. Because any house, if you touch an inside wall in the wintertime, it's warm. But if you touch an outside wall, it's always cooler. And there's some truth in that. There's environment passing through walls that we don't even see, right? And because a guitar is made of wood, it's continually breathing water and air in and out. You don't want it to be flooded with water or starved of water. Because it will crack and die and explode. So you don't want that. So these guitars here on this is an inside wall they're hung on, and I have a couple of other guitars on the walls here, but they're already not moving anymore. Like my 12 strings hanging on an outside wall, but it's 20 years old. It's beyond being affected by any minute. You'd have to dunk it in a bathtub to hurt it. And yeah, so that's sort of the idea. And stands as good as long as your room is controlled. This room here is controlled. It's humidity controlled. We know how much the humidity is here all the time. And if you're going to store your guitars out in a room, in a music room in your home, keep a hygrometer? What is that thing? Hygrometer? Mm-hmm. Yeah, a hygrometer. That's what you want in the room to make sure that you know what the humidity is. And it should be between... for the guitar to remain healthy, 45 to 60. That's where it should be, in that range. Over 60 is dangerous. It starts to get where a guitar will swell, and below 45 is real dangerous. It'll dry out quickly. And I would avoid, I know that people use them, but I don't believe in them. And the reason is that there's no real good way to find out how to use them, and that is humidifiers. Ones that you fill with water or whatever, and you put them in your guitar and blah, 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 blah. Everybody says to use them. I think they're dangerous. I've seen guitars literally exploded by those things because they don't tell you. They don't tell you the details. Okay, so you're gonna fill this thing with water, hang it inside your guitar, and close the case. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. You're closing your guitar in an environment that where one section of it is 100% humidity. Like, that's not healthy. So I don't believe in using those. I think a good guitar should be able to expand and contract with the seasons naturally. And every season it does that. It does it less. Every year it goes a little less until it starts to expel, all all the particles in the wood that allow that to happen, they start to die, and over years it just stops doing it until it usually settles in a great spot, right? As long as you don't let it get too wet or too dry, and you do that just by using common sense. You don't leave a guitar, near an open window during a rainstorm, and you don't leave a guitar in a room in your upper floor of your house that gets 100 degrees in the summer and potentially incredibly dry, and you don't put a guitar near a wood stove. Like all these simple common sense things. You've got to protect an instrument. That's the most important thing to remember about a guitar. It is alive. It's not dead. It's not inanimate material. It's alive. It's still breathing, taking in water, letting out water, using oxygen. It's still alive. So you have to be aware of that and treat them accordingly. Alrighty, who's next?
Ian Roster.
Ian, how you doing, buddy?
In his opinion, regional music has unique accents, just like speech. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if we just looked at the fiddle and went to Cape Breton. Cape Breton has 4 distinct areas of style. So you've got Inverness County. The north of Inverness is French and Irish. So the way they play the fiddle in Shettycamp is completely different than the way they play it in Inverness, which is only 40 minutes down the road. But Inverness is completely Scottish. So, and then the north of Shettycamp up into the Meat Cove, White Point, you start to get into the Irish players. So there's a crossover there. So that's two of them, right? So then the other side of the island in Sydney, there's a lot more Irish. And they play Scottish fiddle tunes differently there. And they have more of a mixture, excuse me, of Irish in the fiddle on the Sydney side. And then you go south from there, and you've got a different group of French fiddlers, and the Mi'kmaq in Eskasoni and Chapel Island, Christmas Island, and all those, like where Lee Crema was from. So you've got all those different pockets on an island that is tiny, and that's just one island. And they are very, very different. And sad to say, there's a lot of prejudices between them. That a lot of the people that follow Southern Inverness fiddlers don't care as much for the people who play it in Shettycamp, or people who play the same tunes in Sydney, or the First Nations fiddlers, and on that goes, right? It's a very cliquish place, and that's because it's been there, isolated there for 200 years. So, but just that one area has at least 4 clearly defined dialects of fiddle music, all purporting to be Scottish and Irish in origin, and subclassified as Cape Breton fiddle music. It's really a conglomerate of many things that came from the old country and were forged and reformed by those settlers, mixed in with each other and the First Nations. So it's very interesting. You could write a whole thesis on that. And again, you move across Canada, down east Coast fiddlers are much different than Ottawa Valley fiddlers, which are much different than Alberta and Winnipeg Métis fiddlers, which are much different again than far west fiddlers, like in Vancouver, Victoria, the interior. They're more influenced by American and jazz out there than we are, and on it goes. So you're right on the money. Like, music is a language, and it's a universal language, but it has 1,000 dialects, and it's always helpful to speak as many of them as you can, or at least learn and translate some of them into your own style. You never get ahead by closing yourself off from anything. Something just because it's different. That's not a good thing. So, yeah, it's an interesting question. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Who's next over there?
Richard Lipp.
Richard
Lip.
Lip. Richard Lip.
What are your thoughts on bolt neck acoustic versus dovetail?
Well, I really like bolt neck guitars for starting fires. They make wonderful kindling. Except for the bolts, they don't burn so good. But, yeah, so that's that.
That's how you really feel.
Yeah, don't do it. Bolt. Let me. There's certain things that set me off, and that's one of them. Bolt-on necks are designed for electric guitars. They make sense because there's no pressure on an electric neck hardly at all. When you're playing electric guitar, I don't even remember. It's been so long since I strung an electric. But some people play electric with 9s on them, which means the big E is 47. There's no pressure on an electric neck. It makes total sense to bolt the neck on because they are a composite instrument. They're designed so you can replace the neck, replace the body, replace the pickups. You can do all kinds. It's a composite's not the right word. Different pieces that go together that are designed to... Modular, exactly. It's a modular instrument. Thank you, Ginger. So putting a bolt-on neck on an acoustic guitar there's only one reason for that. They're too goddamn lazy to build the proper joint. That's why they do it. That's the only reason they do it. Anybody who says that it's some advantage over doing, and there's a multitude of ways to build a jointed neck, some of which are secret, that I know, I've heard, and I can't say what they are because nobody wants to talk about them because some of this stuff is so old that people have forgotten how it's done. And Boucher is one of them. Boucher won't talk about his neck joint because he uses a technique that's ancient and has perfected it. So there's just so many ways to do it properly. There's just no reason to do a guitar with a bolt-on neck. It's incredibly damaging to the quality of the instrument because part of the magic of an acoustic guitar is that the whole instrument is ringing. Like this guitar, this neck, there's a reason why they have a tail on the fingerboard, right? The tail is not decorative. It's there to make contact with the top and to coincide with the way this assembly is set down inside this body here. And it's supposed to be set down in there so that you couldn't put a rat ass hair in the spaces in there. It's perfect. It's perfection when it goes in there. And then once it's glued and blocked and it's in there, this assembly, this whole area, makes the entire guitar vibrate. So it almost translates top to back, right? Because you've got the fingerboard tail coming off, touching the top, rattling the top there. You've got this in here, manipulating the sides and this area of the guitar. And then it translates all the way down into the back. It makes all of that move as well. So there's this crucial area where everything that's going on in the neck is being translated into the body. So if you have a bolt-on neck, you have no connection. The connection is the bolts, which are made of metal, which have no conductive properties whatsoever for sound. They block sound. And because the sound is coming out of wood, it hits the metal and dies. So it's just no good. And that's another reason why truss systems are embedded the way they are in a neck, so they don't interfere with the translation of the sound from the wood. They're deep in the neck, in a trough, right? So they don't, the metal that's in the truss system never comes into play. everywhere that the neck is touching the block and the body and the sides is all wood. So that's the reason. Like I hate it when many times over my career I've seen companies go, we have a new bolt-on neck and it's the best thing ever and blah blah blah, and it sounds like hell. It's horrible, and they're doing it because it's quick, and they're saying that and they're selling it to people saying, because it's a bolt-on, you can adjust it this way and you can do this and you can do that. I don't want to do this and that. I want my guitar to sound like a guitar. And the way to do that is to do a traditional neck block. There's many different versions of it. Yamaha has a version, Boucher has one, Bourgeois has one, Martin, Gallagher, Taylor. Taylor has bolt-on necks in a lot of guitars now, which I find very disturbing because they know better than that. But they're doing it because it's quick and fancy, and it's something they can do as a selling point. But they're ignoring what Bob Taylor already knows, that there's no better way to build a guitar neck joint than with no metal in it. So there you go. I hope that helps. I'm sorry it set me off, but I hate for people to abandon the old ways. There's nothing better coming down the pike. If there was, it would have happened already. They've been building guitars for 500 years. So they would have figured something out by now that could beat, what Christian Martin did and what Orville Gibson did, and on it goes, right? But they haven't. The guitar has been made like that for the past 125 years, and the best guitars that we know of in the history of guitar are all built without the benefit of machines, bolts, any of that stuff. It was done as an artisan building a piece of specific equipment to create music. And once you move away from that, you're just getting into the realm of folly and whimsy. And whimsy's not where it's at. You gotta have, something behind you more than just a gimmick. So there we go. Who's next?
We got Cam with a super chat question.
All right, Cam.
It's a little bit punny, if you will.
Punny?
Punny. What's your favorite string? Mine's the G.
Mine's the G. I don't mind the G string. Well, I've already said this too, and I'll say it again. Elixirs. There's no other way around that. Sorry, they last forever and they sound fantastic to my ear, better than any other string that I've ever used. So, yeah, and specifically, this beer is very gassy. It must be the oysters in it. Specifically, I use NanoWeb Phosphor Bronze Light Gauge. So there you go.
All right. Joe has another question.
Joe!
Mm-hmm. Do you prefer the truss rod setting above the nut or through the sound hole?
It doesn't matter to me. It's easier through the sound hole sometimes. If it's not a recessed access, which a lot of my bouchers are, they're recessed, which is another thing I can't talk about. It's part of the neck block secret, right? But bouchers, you have to have a special tool as a long thingy to get inside to get at the bolt end. These Yamahas I've just reviewed, they have the old-fashioned truss plate cover on the headstock, which is very convenient if you keep, these. I can't even find one right now. I had it out earlier, but if you keep a set of jeweler's screwdrivers on you, they're fantastic. And banjos also have a behind the nut truss end. And I don't mind, and Gibsons too. Gibsons also have that. So it doesn't really matter to me one way or the other. I suppose, it doesn't really matter. And they I think they all work basically the same. I think. I've never noticed anything real weird about, no difference between which end is the accessible end. It's never caused me any problem. So, yeah. Alrighty, who's next?
M. Albert.
It could be M. Albert.
It could be. It says, hey JP, I'm one of your beginner master music methods students with a technical question. He's currently practicing freight train. He's having difficulty transitioning from open to barred chords. Please advise.
Well, it's just a matter of practice. And I think the simplest way to tell you what to practice for doing a barred chord, changing like that, is always think of the barred chord as the index finger going down first. So if you're playing a G, whoops. So you're playing a G chord, and you want to play a G barred, you automatically, your brain goes, that has to go down first. Then the E chord in front of it. And if you lead yourself that way, so the index is going down, then the rest of the chord is following, don't build them backwards. Don't try to put the chord, then the bar. Don't do that. Lead the same way I'm teaching you how to play melody lines. Lead from the index and work outwards like that. From index to pinky. So you form a chord the same way. Index, rest of the chord. Index, rest of the chord. Index, rest of the chord. So lead yourself with your index and give yourself a bit of time. You know, this is not going to happen overnight. If you're just starting to do it, it takes time. You're going to be a bit of time, and depending on who you are and just the level of ability, natural ability you have, it could take months. I mean, when I was a little kid, I was a freak, but it still took me a couple of months to get comfortable doing bar chords. I was doing them, but they hurt like hell, and I was not real smooth at changing, but I dealt with them all the time because I was playing Chet. So again, one of the reasons I taught Freight Train, because it has some validity for teaching a lot of left hand muscle memory. Here's another thing you could do too. If you don't want to play bar, if you're just playing a bar E, right? Chet always used to do this. He would just play the bottom half of it, the last 5 strings, the bar in the bottom, and then he'd cover that top with his thumb. I don't do that much. I do it in F. It takes a lot of grip. You got to get your thumb over the top back there while making a chord. It's just about as hard as the bar chord, but it's an option that, frankly, is slightly faster than making the bar chord. So try either one and see what happens. And good luck. And thanks for being on the Master Music Method. All right, who do we got?
Darren Forbes.
Darren Forbes. I know Darren.
Do you own and play an Irish bazooki?
I used to, and I sold it. I love them too, but I stopped playing the bazooki because of Darren McMullen. Darren's the best bazooki player I know, and I figured, if I want a bazooki player, it's just a giant mandolin, so it's easier for me to play. I can play it all day long, but I'm not a bazooki player, so a guy who really does it like Darren is invaluable. So I thought if I'm going to use bazooki on my records, I'm going to hire Darren, because not only does Darren need the work as everybody does, but he's just a better bazooki player than anybody that I know, because he really plays it, and he uses a lot of different tunings that aren't violin tuning, that GDAE tuning. So yeah, I love the instrument, but I do not have one anymore. No. Alrighty.
The Happy Knot.
The Happy Knot.
Mm-hmm. I would like to purchase a handmade violin. Oh, no, sorry. How would I purchase a handmade violin? Is there a waiting list? And do you have any violin maker suggestions in the Cape Breton / Nova Scotia area?
I have nobody here, but If you look up a gentleman in North Carolina named Bob Kogut, Kogut, he's the best violin maker I've ever seen, and I'm one of his fiddles. And you could never go wrong buying one of his violins. He's just unbelievable. If you want to hear my Kogut, I'm going to be playing it Friday night on a live concert. So you come back here and watch us, and that violin will just be getting played through this microphone, and it will blow your face right off. I've just never heard anything like it. And Bob's not getting any younger. So if you want one, I would really reach out to him. He's on Facebook as well. And if you told him that I sent you, I'm sure he'd be happy to. I don't know if he has a large list. He might, and he might not. When I met him, he had 5 or 6 violins for sale. So you just never know. He's the best I've ever seen. So that's all I can tell you. That's where I would go. Bob Kogut, Kogut, and unbelievable. And if you want to hear one of his violins, come listen to the show Friday at 5 p.m. here on YouTube. Be doing a 90-minute fiddle show, and that's the violin I'll be using. So there you go.
Acoustic Guitar Canada has another question.
All right.
It says, as Martin may need a neck reset in a few years, over time would a boucher last longer before having to reset the neck? Be nice.
Oh, sorry. A boucher would never need a neck reset. Because they just don't. Your Martin, I assume, has no truss system. And if it does have a truss system and you need a neck reset, that's not good. That's not too good on Martin's part. You'll never have to reset a boucher neck. That's what I was just talking about earlier. His neck block design is fairly infallible. There's no way to knock it out of whack, and the top is never going to collapse like some guitars do, and on that goes. Like a neck reset is caused by a massive failure in the structure of the body. It's because the top has fallen right here. This has sunk in, or this has lifted up, and you can't get it back down, or the tail has warped because the neck is not inset into the body correctly. So yeah, you would never reset a boucher neck. I can't see that ever happening. I'm sorry, but I think it's impossible to ever have to do that. And they have an amazing dual dual direction truss system in these necks that are so sensitive. You just go, and the neck just goes, and you can adjust this thing.
What, the noise again?
You can adjust these things by millimeters with just a little movement, right? And it's because the necks are so well put together. So don't feel bad. I'm not laughing at you. If you knew how many people I know who have had to go take Martins for neck resets, it's just frustrating to me that happens, because I've been playing guitar for 46 years and I have never had a neck reset, and I've never owned a Martin for longer than a year or two, right? And the ones that I owned, well, fell apart before they could get any older. I had a D45 with the bridge came off after 6 months. And the only Martin I ever owned that survived was my Clarence White, and it's not in the best of shape after 15 years. It has the problems I'm describing. It's fallen over the sound hole, and it's starting to be weird. So eventually, I don't know what will happen. It has a truss system in it, which helps. But I don't know if it'll survive for another 15 years without having some major work done to it. And that's very disappointing because it's a great guitar. And I've always found that when you have to take apart an instrument at that level, like remove the neck or remove the top or the back, or like fix the top or back in some major way, or replace a bridge plate and a bridge that's blown off, right? The guitar never sounds the same. It just never sounds the same. My 45 was repaired by excellent workers, at the 12th fret in Toronto, the best bench guys in the world. But that guitar never, I got it back and it's like, it sounds great, but it doesn't sound like it was when I bought it. It's not the same instrument at all. The connection's gone and been changed where the rubber met the road on that guitar. And I sold it. I paid $13,000 for that guitar and I sold it for $4,000. So you can see, like, it's very frustrating to pay thousands of dollars for a guitar and have it fail so spectacularly that you never want to play that maker again. And it's sad, but it happens to a lot of people. It's happened to me. It's happened to many people I know. There are some brands that they won't touch because they spent a fortune and had a catastrophic failure. And, but if you love your Martin and you want to keep it going and a neck reset is necessary, take it to the best guy you can take it to. And because you don't want to end up with a different instrument at the end, which can happen. So you've got to be really careful that you take it to somebody who's incredibly well qualified to do the work. I would say send it to Martin, but they would probably charge you the price of a new D28 to fix the problem. So I don't know what to tell you. I wish you the best of luck. And again, I don't believe that these instruments here would ever require a neck reset. And if they did, Robin would do it for free. I can guarantee you that, because he has that much confidence in his neck joint that if one failed, he'd be like, oh, is that so? I'd like to see that. And he'd get it in there, and if it was wrong, he'd fix it just out of sheer pride, because he's talked to me for hours about that, and it's very fascinating what he knows about the neck joint in the guitar. But anyhow, I hope you have best of luck to you. I know what it's like to have a sick baby, so I hope you do well with it. All right, who's next?
Francis McGinnis.
Francis, that name sounds familiar.
They're wondering if you found anything out about the use of oak in a guitar from last week.
I didn't have time to look, and I was kind of fooling around with it a little bit, and no. But I'm gonna maybe take a closer look at that. I did look for some stuff, but didn't find anything. Did you find anything?
No, we couldn't find anybody that used it.
Yeah, I started to look for it and couldn't find anything real quickly. Except, electric builders have used it, solid body guitars. But again, it's so heavy. It would be amazing to me to have any large company using it. But if you message me maybe, after the show, and give me some suggestions about where I might see this.
Okay.
The only person I can think of right off the top of my head is Rosani, who might use oak, because he uses the weirdest woods you've ever seen to build guitars. So that I could picture, but I can't recall ever seeing any company I've ever dealt with use that species. So, yeah, if you can help us out with a place to look for it, that'd be really good. So I'm going to make a note of that again, because I made a note last week and failed to find anything that would help me. I'll make another note here, and we'll see what we can do again this week. Okay. Awesome. All right. Thanks for that. Who's next?
Next is Chris Murphy.
Chris Murphy.
You mentioned a few times that you use light gauge elixirs for your guitars.
Yes.
What about mandolin and banjo? Still elixirs and still light gauge?
Yes, light gauge mandolin elixirs, and my banjo strings are usually whatever crap I can find for $10. Because I don't change my banjo strings but once every 2 years. And as long as it's an unwound third, I'm good to go. So, banjo strings generally aren't, they're played with metal. So they're not really, and it's a very metallic instrument, so they don't really die very easily. You've only got one wound string, which is the D, and you usually hit it hard enough and little enough that it doesn't die very easily, and it's nickel wound. So yeah, I use anything from Gibson to GHS to Earthwood, John Pierce. I don't know, anything to get my hands on that's the right gauge. I use a medium gauge banjo string. A lot of the great players use light gauge, and I don't like them. I find them too floppy. But that's probably also because I drop thumb on the banjo too, which I prefer a heavier string for that. And I have a very heavy right hand on the banjo. I play with a lot of force, so I find the lighter strings just flop too much on me, and I hit them so hard they go out of tune and then into tune again. They go sharp and then flat. I hit them so hard, so yeah, just about anything. But the mandolin is all elixir, dobro's elixir, guitar's all elixir. Even the bass, I put elixirs on my bass as well. My Warwick and my Warwick Acoustic, they all have elixir strings. Best strings I've ever used. So, yeah, sir.
I think it's trivia time.
Really? Already?
We can do a question after.
Okay. I got a good trivia question for you. I'm looking for a name of a man who was born in Cyprus. Born in Cyprus under the name Dikran Gobalian was his name. He emigrated to Canada in the early 60s, and he changed his name with the Ontario Change of Name Act in Toronto in the early 60s. And he began to play folk clubs in Toronto and then Montreal. And then from there, he became one of the most famous jazz, ragtime singers, guitar players that ever lived. He came to fame doing things like cartoons. He was the voice of cartoons. He did the all detergent commercials, and he hit his real stride on Saturday Night Live. But he was one of the greatest performers, Americana performers, ever. And we just lost him a couple of years ago. He was not born in Canada, but has been, he himself claimed to be Canadian, even though he wasn't born here. But his stage name was born here. Who am I talking about?
So I don't know the answers, so I'll just read you all the answers in order. Scotty.
No.
Bill.
No.
Leon Redbone.
Yes. Who got Leon Redbone?
Michael O'Coin.
Has he won before?
I don't remember.
I don't think so. Michael O'Coin. Leon Redbone. That is indeed the person I'm talking about. Born Dikran Gobalian. What a name. In Cyprus. Moved to Canada, changed his name legally in the province of Ontario, began performing in Toronto, Montreal, all through Quebec, all through Ontario, really southern Ontario. Eventually ended up in New York, and the rest is history. He became, well, he's one of my favorite artists of all time. Nothing I love better than listening to Leon Redbone sing and play the guitar. One of the world's greatest ragtime guitar players. So, Michael O'Coin, you are going to send an email right now to jpcormier38@gmail.com. Reference winning the contest tonight. And you, sir, are going to win the normal giveaway from Glenn up at G&G Music. You're going to get a free G&G strap leather custom strap from Levy Straps, a free set of strings and a winder. And for the next week, if you buy a Boucher, you're going to get $250 off the Boucher guitar, any Boucher, and a Boucher custom leather Levy strap, which is a $140 value. So there's a $390 gift from G&G Music in Antigonish. So you'll get your strings, your winder, coupon for $250 off any Boucher guitar. Plus they throw in a beautiful, and I have several of them. I love those things. A Levy's Boucher custom strap, $140 value. There you go. You won it with Leon Redbone here on String Theory. Let's take one more question. We got about 4 or 5 minutes left. So
I got Norm Cormier.
Norm Cormier.
Any relation?
I don't think so.
Is there any advantage to hide glue finish?
Hide glue? Well, yeah. I mean, hide glue is the earliest, is like one of the earliest ways they put guitars together. And like anybody will tell you that an instrument that's built with hide glue is much preferred to the later adhesive they used. I mean, I don't know a lot about it. I know that like some of the greatest historical instruments, like all the old Gibsons and Martins, and even people like, I think, Stradivarius, built their instruments with hide glue and things like, they had all kinds of tricks up their sleeves. But yeah, hide glue is definitely preferred to any modern kind of man-made adhesive. Hide glue is literally from horses, I think, and other animals that they use their skins and fat to create adhesive. But yeah, it's an organic adhesive, and it's incredibly. I've read a lot about it, but it's got so many bizarre properties that yeah, it's definitely something I would look into. If you're going to buy a custom-made guitar from a private builder or something, ask them what they use for adhesive, and if they are willing to use hide glue. It's not easy to use, apparently. So those sort of things, like, you have to research that. But there are still builders who use it, absolutely. So yeah, hide glue is a thing. Next.
Lyle Goldberg.
Again.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a preference for closed versus open tuners?
No, none whatsoever. I suppose at one time I would have, because the like guitars like Gibsons. Okay, Gibson's a good example. They used to use sort of a Kluson style tuner. I don't know if that's who built them. But the only reason I would prefer an open tuner to a closed tuner is if the tuners were shite. Because you can fix an open tuner, but you can't fix an enclosed one, especially ones like Grover, and like the ones that are on a Martin or even a Yamaha. They're enclosed. You can't really get them apart, so there's a problem. Like, they're all built in there, and they're packed with grease and all this stuff, and that's how they work. An open tuner you can fix. You can see if it's loose. You can see if the screw is stripped. You can see this thing. You can replace individual parts and fix an individual tuner instead of having to buy a whole set. But these days, I find all tuners seem to be in like so high quality that it doesn't seem to matter. Like the tuners on my little Recording Kings. You wouldn't think that those would be super high quality, but they are, and they're closed. And I'm not worried about them because they seem to work incredibly well. And of course, I have Bouchers with, these type of slotted head spindle tuners and open back tuners and closed tuners on my OMs, and I've never had a problem with any of them. So there you go. Like, it's right now today, I don't really think there's any danger of using either style. 30 years ago, yes, I would say you might want to look at using open tuners instead of closed, depending on what company you were dealing with. So, yeah, today, not so much. The quality is really high today. So, there we go. That'll do it for tonight. And get Ginger to cue the music. And I want to tell you how much we enjoy doing this with you guys every week. I look forward to this all day long. And I try to keep up on everything that's going on. And obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in our neck of the woods here. So I want to thank K&K Music, Levy Strap, Boucher Guitars, Recording King. Special shout out to Fantasy Music in Halifax, K&K Pickups, and of course all of you who continue to support us. And we hope you come see us this Friday night, for the live show with me and Kim and Skip Holmes. Do an entire program of fiddle music, the first one I've done in about 15 years. So get ready, we're going to tear it up. And don't forget, for you guitar players out there, the guy who has the most when he dies wins. We'll see you soon.